Hey everyone, this is what we call the dead session where you've got to get people to wake up, okay? So this is, I drew the short straw, so I get the last sessions on the Friday afternoon, but I've got a couple of topics that people really want to talk about. So, Silk Legal. We are Australia, by the accent, Australian Thai legal company. We provide consultancy services in a lot of fields. But in the last 4 or 5 years, our biggest area is in alternate medicine. And that's what we're going to focus on today. If you national industry here. You walk down the street in 2 kilometers, if you can't find 15, 20 cannabis dispensaries providing alternate health options, then there's something different. Technical issues. Someone smoking at the back? Okay, products later. So one of the things we're talking about today is an interesting topic. We have a practice called conventional alternate medicine. Conventional medicine obviously is Western medicine. It's medicine centered around therapeutic products that are registered under the FDA internationally, manufactured by organizations. Alternate medicine is more in the Thai traditional medicine and herbs area, which is an interesting part and unique to Thailand, which is a big part of the push by the Tourist Authority to draw people into Thailand. This is a disclaimer. Unfortunately, being a lawyer, I've got to tell you that everything I say today is unrepeatable because I can't take any responsibility for it. If you don't pay, you don't play. So these are free announcements, but we do provide consultation. Look, let's focus on cannabis because it leads us into a couple of interesting areas. Kratom or kratom is another interesting area. Psilocybins, which is the mushroom area, is another interesting area, as is Thai traditional herbs. This is a great focus point because it's a great case study on how Thailand stumbled into being one of the most recognized countries in the world, and certainly in Asia, in developing a wellness industry around cannabinoids. And whether it was intentional or not, we do have a very innovative industry out there. 1.5 billion US dollars, they say, is in the cannabis industry at the moment, and it's transitioning to wellness from recreational. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So it's a pretty interesting area. And don't forget, cannabis is not legal. There's a huge difference. Europe has just had a second country legalizing cannabis, which is Luxembourg, after Malta. Thailand did not legalize cannabis. It decriminalized a plant. It didn't legalize cannabis. So we're going to get onto that in a minute as we talk about how we move from recreational to wellness to putting in place an effective wellness and health industry. Okay, you would never know that there were restrictions on the use of cannabis by going down on the street. You see people sitting outside smoking cannabis. You can walk in and buy cannabis, and you have the bud tenders selling to you cannabis on various strengths and potencies, and very few of them talk about any therapeutic value. It's how high you can get and what sort of buzz you'll get from it, but we'll get onto that in a minute. That's the way it's evolved, and what it evolved for that is because that initially was where the money was. So a lot of people were into this, and they made a lot of money initially, and people are making a whole lot less money now. So what happened is that we had a lot of problems when cannabis was decriminalized. Kratom was decriminalized, legalized several years before that, and we barely hear anything about it. Medical hemp was legalized several years before that, which is around CBD, and we very rarely hear anything about it. And why is that? Well, firstly, there are laws about smoking in public, which are seldom enforced. So that's a problem. Second problem is, although THC over certain levels is still an illegal drug, no one enforces it. You can go down the street, and I will tell you in most of those dispensaries, you can buy tinctures clearly over that limit. The next thing is importation is banned under the law. 70% at the start and probably 50% now is coming from North America of cannabis. And that's because there is 1.5 billion grams of cannabis in Canada that can't be sold. So what's happening? People are bringing it in, suitcases, shipping containers, whatever. The other problem is that cannabis was declared a controlled herb, which you'll see kicks on a number of issues. So none of that was actually enforced. People were encouraged to go to a Book Ganja app and so, look, log on, do what you want. It was never designed for that. It was designed for personal growth, not commercial. So a lot of things happen. Electronic advertising. I can point you to a dozen websites where you can order cannabis now and it can be delivered. You can be 18 or 28 or 38. They'll still deliver it. So enforcement's an issue. So where did Thailand stumble and where do you think it's going to is an interesting one as we look at licensing of wellness. And it's not because it's wrong, it's because it has a knock-on effect on the credibility of others licensing in similar areas. So next slide. Next slide. All right, so in my view, the fat lady's sung. And the fat lady's sung, it's a Western expression, meaning it's coming to the end of the opera, this end of the free-for-all. Clearly, the Move Forward Party has said no more. We're going to look at it again. The parties that are part of the supposedly new regime are predominantly anti-cannabis, so we're going to see a lot of changes. And it is a good model for the number of steps you need to go through to license dispensaries, wellness clinics, etc., around the Thai traditional medicine thematic. Next slide. So, they've said already that 70% of these dispensaries, you come back next year to CISW, I hope you come back next year, they won't be around. Clearly, they're not going to be around. And what's going to happen is there's going to be a migration from the unrestricted recreational side of cannabis into a wellness and health side of cannabis, which is where it was intended to be. Next one, please. So, 3 options for the government. 1, do nothing. There'll be a revolt, an uprising, because the parties were elected on a very strong anti-cannabis platform. We can talk about that in the sessions later, but this was all generated by a lot of hype and a lot of bad publicity generated in the industry. Secondly, is they can put it in a medical sector, a medical wellness sector, which is the most likely. And the third one is they can still kick it back as a narcotic and enforce it as it was before with 10, 15 grams that you can buy down the stairs, putting you in jail for 5 to 10 years. So most likely it's going to be the middle course. So what does it mean? As a lawyer, we don't like talking about this because the act hasn't been put in place. But there are a number of signals of what's required to license a dispensary or a health and medical practice around traditional medicine. So we know that there's a Cannabis Act. We know that there's also other laws in place which guide a dispensary or a wellness center and what it can and can't do. Next slide. Okay, framework. And I've got 2 minutes to do this, so I'm going to talk really quickly. So, Narcotics Act, next slide. First one, Protection and Promotion and Knowledge of Thai Traditional Medicine Act. We call it Traditional Medicine Act. It sets out a regime of what you need to do if you're in this particular area, this particular space of traditional medicine. Hugely popular overseas. It encompasses cannabis as one of the constituents, not all of it, but it's one where there are clear licensing guidelines. So you need to be registered. You need to do certain things which we call seed to sale, tracking, and if you violate that, then you can lose your license and you can be fined. Next slide. Controlled herb. Cannabis has been declared a controlled herb, so you have a number of criteria under that, and usually if it's not for study research, you need licenses to use it for commercial purposes, to grow for commercial purposes, which normally mean GACP production. And we can talk about that at length during the sessions, but GACP is a mandate. 90% of people at the moment do not comply. Next slide. Herbal products. Herbal products to be licensed. So you've got your clinic, you're selling herbal products. Herbal products are licensed under a particular act which provides the criteria for what you need to do to sell them as a traditional medicine or a herbal product with therapeutic claims. Next slide. So, it also talks about what you can and can't say in the advertising. It also talks about labeling. So there's a number of criteria you need to put into place. Next slide. Herbal Product Act, how do you license it? It all comes under, in this case, DTAM, Food and Drug Administration, and also the Department of Traditional Medicine. They control the licensing and what you can and can't do, so don't go put it in your own bottle and sell it in your shop because you'll have people knocking on the door. Next slide. Advertising again, sanctions and non-compliance. In typical Thai style, you've got a fine of 300,000 baht, or you can spend 3 years in jail. That's normally how they control these things with fairly heavy criminal penalties. So, licensing, permits, registrations, licensing is required of the product. You need qualified medical practitioners. If they're under the Traditional Medicine Act, they need to be qualified there and they're registered there. And then finally, zoning. So don't go putting these places in the wrong area because there are zoning requirements for any clinic or any traditional medicine establishment. So, records, documentation, safety, and this is quite common whether it's Western medicine or traditional medicine. And then finally, next slide. Okay, and the options for the clinics, what we're expecting is a rush of people, those that have sufficient capital, to reinvent themselves in the Thai traditional wellness or in the wellness and health setting. So we're going to see a rush of people pushing Thailand simply because this infrastructure, which sits in place now as a dispensary, will need to be converted and will become a health benefit wellness center. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul Crosio, partner.
Excuse me. Yeah, I would like to ask something. Okay, so you mentioned that the recreational THC and CBD in the form of the plant of a joint is something that we think of as a dangerous thing. But how we differentiate alcohol from recreation of, what's the difference? How we differentiate? I mean, what is the problem? Why it cannot be just recreational? Yeah.
I'm going to make it really easy. I'm a doctor, but mine's in law, not in medicine. So I'm going to tell you the answer is because the law says so. So the law has made a decision that alcohol is restricted in a certain area and cannabinoids are restricted in another area. And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It doesn't mean it makes any sense. It's just simply the law says that. Yeah, sure.
No, I'm not asking you as a lawyer. I'm asking, what's your personal opinion?
My personal opinion is that CBD and the other terpenes in cannabis has a positive, beneficial medical effect. It needs to be coupled with THC to give it its true effectiveness, but it doesn't mean you go and smoke a joint. It's given in a therapeutic setting, and in that, I totally support it. In a recreational setting, I got plenty of other things to have fun with. I don't need that. It doesn't do a lot for me, but if you like it, that's fine.
But at the same time, the law is, the alcohol is available everywhere. And there is no any medicinal purpose behind alcohol, except mental. Okay. Red wine. Now we are talking, okay. So essentially just presumption, and it's just, how do you say, like prejudice? How do you say? It's, you know what I mean? I mean, there is medically there is no any danger in recreational taking of the weed.
I'm going to answer that, and we can have a long discussion on this. But if I just smoke weed and I get in a Maserati, it kills you just as much as I drink alcohol. Okay, the answer is it's quite dangerous. Some people lose awareness. However, it's a debatable point. Society said this is what it is. However, in this country, I will take your point. With the liberalization of cannabis, I don't see a huge uptick in social issues. I personally don't see it. Okay. It's good. Good questions. Okay, I hope everyone sticks for the question and answer session later. We'll have fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.